You got right into that singing and elbowed me out the way.
You almost sang too fast for the theme song.
Did I?
You did.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention.
You was like a second ahead.
I was ready to get in there.
You're ready.
Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just Gay Stuff Podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I am Jess. And I don't know what it's like on the day that this episode is coming out, but I can tell you right now, it is bloody freezing here in Queensland. It should be against the law.
But you're an odd sort. You find it's freezing when it's like under 23 degrees.
Yeah, but I don't know what it is today. I reckon it's like 18.
It's like 18 or 16.
It's gross.
Although we were talking about this at dinner last night when you were playing. Everybody's like, have you seen the TikTok where it's like 12 degrees and everybody in each state is like Victoria, whatever, Adelaide, Orwell, or Sydney, blah, blah. And Queensland, it's like, fuck, it's freezing. They have all like their hoodies and everything on.
I'll be an Eskimo.
Yeah, you'd be the Eskimo.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into this week's episode, I wanted to sort of discuss something with you that I overheard on the radio, which was really funny to me. Like, I work in an office job and that can be quite boring at times.
So you just listen to the radio
So my
all day.
colleague and I have a radio station going, but I thought this particular topic was really interesting because it was like these words went bing in my head.
Oh, yeah?
Because the topic was queer baiting.
Oh.
And we had just recently done an episode on queer baiting. And I thought
Yes.
this was really interesting because the host that was asking about queer baiting, she genuinely did not know. She was asking her co-host, oh, what is queer baiting?
Because she's straight and her co-host is queer.
Yeah, her co-host is queer. So she was asking them, and it was kind of interesting because when we did our episode, we spoke a lot on like TV shows
Writing
and movies
and
and writing
marketing
and that kind of thing. However, with this one, they were talking about artists, and those artists in particular being Harry Styles and Benson Boone.
Yeah, see, when we touched on artists, we only kind of touched on those who had like kissed same-sex people for like music videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. But for this, I think it was because Benson Boone had a new song coming out and they were discussing both Harry Styles and Benson Boone because they both wear quite gender-bending clothing.
Like the David Bowie effect.
Yeah, the David Bowie effect. I still find it's weird that clothing has a gender. But
yeah, I mean, whatever.
It's
a
cloth,
piece of material,
it's
whatever.
Cloth, whichever. And, you know, you would often see them on stage. Like Harry Styles is quite feminine in terms of like skirts he wears or...
Well, I think the thing is he's not afraid to be feminine.
Yeah.
Which is, as we've said in a couple of episodes ago, people are afraid of femininity.
That's what it is. People are afraid of the femininity, and it's the same as Benson Boone. He wears quite like feminine style clothing that society wouldn't generally consider a male artist's norm.
Like they wouldn't consider it men's clothes.
Attire.
Okay.
But I don't know. Do you think that they were necessarily leaning into the queer baiting? Or do you think that it's just a fluid way of them being?
I don't think it's queer baiting at all.
Yeah.
And I know that wasn't the general consensus of this particular radio
Conversation,
segment.
yeah.
But I think that this is people of a new generation literally allowing themselves to be expressive through clothing because, as you've said, clothing is genderless and it should always have been that way.
Yeah, and I agree. I think if you strip everything back and you take away gender as a whole and it's just a person, these are artists. So, of course, they're going to express themselves in a creative way. And sometimes it's just nice to feel flowy and whatnot. Like you and I are the same. Sometimes we like feeling pretty in a dress or like feeling like comfy in
not
pants.
like that.
Well, okay.
But in
You know what
saying
I
that,
mean.
No, in saying that, I would agree that like if I could wear sweatpants everywhere, I would.
Yeah.
Just because it's comfy, they're not gendered. Like, yes, okay, guys at the gym wear sweatpants mostly. That doesn't make me a guy at the gym, you know. I would never go to the gym. But I think the whole thing about these artists being so fluid is to show this next generation of people that we can be this way and it doesn't take away from masculinity.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from femininity, you know? I think like clothes are clothes and as we said, it's just a piece of material. Like what's it matter? Like who wears it?
I think it's really interesting as well because back in the Roman times and the ancient Greek times, they all wore togas. So they were all essentially wearing dresses,
and then
really.
Scottish heritage is kilts and that's just a giant skirt.
Same,
But
yeah.
so how come when you look at these different aspects of culture, we're not emasculating that man wearing a kilt, but we'll happily emasculate someone like Harry Styles for wearing a skirt. Like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's
I think I like I've never been a huge Harry Styles or One Direction fan, but
Me
I love
neither.
I love Harry Styles in the way that people scrutinize him over his fashion choices, and his thing is to go bigger and bolder every time. It's like a big fuck you to the world.
But ultimately, like, what's it matter what you wear?
Yeah, and he's just comfortable.
Here's
so.
the funny thing. He shows up in these outfits, right? And people go, you shouldn't have worn that, blah, blah, blah. But if he showed up naked, they'd still have an issue.
Oh yeah, of course.
This is where I feel like
There's no winning.
you know what? You got to just do you. In this lifetime, in your lifetime, you got to do you. You got to be as happy as you can be, because at the end of the day, you're always going to upset someone.
Yeah.
So you may as well make yourself happy, really.
Exactly. I agree with you. I don't think that they're necessarily leaning into the queer baiting to increase their sales.
No.
However, that was the consensus of the radio station that they put
really?
it, that it was in that context increasing sales and listeners and stuff. But I
disagree.
I disagree that way too. And like you said, we had a discussion about Fletcher recently.
Yeah, which I have to say, it's funny because our episode came out where I spoke about she erased her queer history. Well, on her Instagram, that is all back now. So I think that she has realized how maybe
damaging it could have been.
Yeah, how maybe like she went the wrong way about certain aspects of what she did there. So congrats to Fletcher for, putting her queer history back on the internet.
Rectifying the situation.
Yeah. Just as you were talking about the queer baiting from Harry Styles and Benson Boone, which I don't think is a thing through clothing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the AI generation of Robert Irwin and Shawn Mendes.
See, I haven't even seen that. I didn't even know this was a thing.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Have you not been on the internet for the last month?
No, I haven't seen it once, and I did not know this until we were out to dinner the other night with our friends.
Oh my
and you brought it up.
Okay, so everyone listening, I'm sure
And
you've
Lauren.
seen I'm sure you've seen the viral photo that's going around, which is very 100% AI generated. Like, you can tell, because in the photo, it's Shawn Mendes and Robert Irwin, and they've got their arms around each other, but the arms are like the wrong arms.
Odd, yeah.
Yeah, so AI has done a terrible job of getting their clothing correct. But this image has broken the internet.
Yeah.
Because obviously there was rumors flying from this AI image, and then obviously Robert Irwin's people have gone, we don't know where this has come from. It's just AI. I don't think Shawn Mendes' people have commented on it, or I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
What I do find interesting are some of the comments on this photo. And obviously we know as queer people to stay out of the comment section. I still love to read the comment section to see how society is progressing.
They're not getting very far.
No, it was a mistake. Let me say it was a mistake. But one comment stood out to me, and I have to say, I disagree with it so hard that it is just so wrong. So this one comment said, Steve Irwin would be saying, crikey, my son would never do anything like that.
I disagree.
I am here to say the Steve Irwin that we all know and love would be so accepting of his son.
I feel like Steve Irwin would be the head of the Pride float parade. It would just be a gay crocodile.
I feel like he was just so progressive as a human that he would not be so closed off to queer people.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that comment forward and be like, no, fuck you. We as a nation know Steve Irwin better than your little homophobic ass does.
Oh, yeah, true. Steve Irwin would be the head of the queer community, queer ally parade, all that. He'd be like, yeah, my son's queer. Woo.
Yeah, I reckon. So
anyway,
right. So
we'll get into this week's episode now.
After this blabbing session, yes, Lauren, take it away.
All right. Well, in this week's episode, I thought we'd do something a little bit interesting.
Okay.
I'm
down for interesting.
Well, as you know, I like to put Jess into some precarious positions.
She does, everyone.
It's not sex. Calm down. This is not a sex podcast.
Do that on the radio.
No.
I know we have a 9 p.m. slot, but still.
What I mean is we're going to play a game. So you liked last time when I got you to play that game of who you would date and close your eyes. And blah, blah. But this time, I don't know if our listeners remember if they've gone all the way back to the beginning. We did an episode called Is This a Lesbian Myth or Lesbian Mythbusting?
That wasn't that far, wasn't that far back.
Oh, well.
Probably a month or so ago.
A month or so ago. It feels like way back.
It does.
Well, for this one, I have decided that queer people as a whole, we often hear myths
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I've decided we're going to play a game of queer myth busting.
All right. I'm ready.
Sit back, relax, and who you going to call? Just Gay Stuff Mythbusters.
Woo!
Just kidding.
I liked that.
I don't have the
rights
trademark for that.
Lauren,
It's
shut up, Lauren.
funny. So the way this game is going to go, I'm going to ask you the question and you're
Okay.
going to tell me if you think this is a myth, explain your answer.
Okay. Or if it's true.
And then
Okay.
I'll explain the real answer. Okay, you ready?
We're not getting sciencey like those guys on the actual show.
Oh,
Mythbusters.
no.
Okay.
I didn't do science.
Okay.
All right. The first one.
Yep.
We just talked about this in the recent episode. You can always tell someone is queer by the way they look or dress. Myth or truth?
Myth. Myth. Because sometimes they're just an art student.
Or alternative?
Or alternative. We can't gender clothes. We can't queer clothes up. We can't make clothes gay. We can't make clothes straight.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, like, if I saw a guy walking around in booty shorts, yes, I would think he was camp and gay. But that's where stereotypically that's just been a social thing. That doesn't actually necessarily mean that.
That's true. Well, as you said, that is a complete myth.
Complete myth.
And this myth suggests that queer people fit into a stereotypical appearance.
Nope, they don't.
And for example, this is some of the stereotype things that people often assume or get told. So
Can I say, though, some of us do fit the stereotype.
that's true. And some of us do. And some of us have that way because that's how you feel belonged or accepted or what you want to express yourself as. And that's totally fine.
And I know people keep saying we need to squash the stereotype. Absolutely. I agree with that. But I think we also have to admit that some of us still fit the stereotypes.
Yeah.
And some of us like that, and that's okay.
So here are some of the assumptions for said stereotype.
Okay.
Gay men are assumed to be flamboyant or fashion forward.
I mean, it's quite a compliment to say that you're fashion forward.
I like this one because this is not true looking at both you and me sitting here. Lesbians are imagined as masculine or butch.
I can be masculine if you want me to.
No. This one I have a problem with. Bisexual people are stereotyped as confused or just experimenting, often portrayed with hypersexual clothing.
Hypersexual clothing.
Yeah.
Do you know, what do you picture a bisexual to wear? I'll tell you what I think.
Jeans and a shirt.
I picture a bisexual like Jenny in the first episode of The L Word.
Really?
Like cargo pants and cons and a singlet with like a really girly hairdo.
Okay, interesting.
Because it's kind of like,
a mix of both.
yeah. And I know that's just 100% a stereotype.
Yeah.
But that's just where my mind goes.
I don't know. I've never assumed, but then as someone who presents quite femme and identifying as a bisexual my whole life until coming out as 26, I don't know.
You're like, I wear what I wear.
Yeah, wear what I wear. I'm comfortable.
Right now I'm wearing a black jumper.
Right now I'm wearing a black jumper and cargo pants, so...
They're not cargo pants. They're nice pink pants.
Oh, they're pink ones. I thought they were my...
These are your camp flamboyant gay
These
pants.
are my gay pants. I thought they were my other ones. No. They're comfy. The hypersexual clothing I can understand, and I think that again comes from this stereotype.
But what is hypersexual clothing? Bisexual people aren't walking around in like gimp suits and lingerie.
I don't know if it comes by the clothing or whether it comes by the fact that bisexuals are hypersexualized anyways, because, you know, it's the boyfriend going, oh yeah, my girlfriend's
And
bisexual.
can I just
can get
say,
a threesome, mate.
the stereotype of bisexual people being confused or going through a phase or experimenting, that is 100% bi erasure, everyone.
Yep.
Can we stop on that stereotype of people that like both genders or more than one gender are going through a phase or experimenting? Like, how about they just like who they like?
Yeah,
and
you just like whatever. The next one, trans people are expected to present in exaggerated versions of their gender.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Trans people can present however they want to present.
Exactly.
The same as everyone on this planet.
Yeah, it's true. Non-binary people are assumed to look androgynous or alternative.
I mean, I'm going to be honest here and I'm going to say I thought that for a long time because that's what TV and pop culture tells you when you don't actually know people that are non-binary in your life. As you learn and as you grow, you realize that people around you could identify as non-binary and you wouldn't know because they still present femme or they still present masculine. It's up to them. The whole reason that they don't fit the binary code is because they don't identify with being male or female.
Yeah,
they can swing between the two and that's like your God-given right.
I think that's the thing as well. People, again, they only go off what they've seen, somewhat representation. And unfortunately, majority of non-binary people have presented in a quite androgynous way. So, of course, you don't necessarily think straight away of a more femme-presenting non-binary person.
No, you don't.
But they're everywhere.
Yeah, you automatically do think androgyny. And I think that's because that's society's way of understanding it.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it right.
No, it's a lack of education.
Yeah.
And if that's what you've been pushed to the forefront of your mind, of course, that's all you're going to assume.
Yeah, totally. But
Right.
that's where we're here to help you out.
We are. And just to break this down, here is why a myth like this can be harmful. Being LGBTQIA+ is about identity, not how someone looks.
Mm-hmm.
You can't spot someone's sexuality or gender identity by their hairstyle, makeup, or fashion choices. Queer people exist in all styles.
Can I say, though, you can spot some of us?
You can.
I want to put it out there. You can spot some of us.
I feel like sometimes queer people generally do that so you know that you're safe in a space.
Yeah.
Other people
So
know
if
that you're
walking-
queer as well.
If you're walking behind someone, you can be like, one of us, one of us. And then, that person has your back.
Yeah. So some dress bold and expressive. Others prefer neutral, conservative, or even preppy looks.
I love a preppy look.
Me too. There are queer goths, skaters, hippies, business professionals, tradies, and everything in between.
Oh, do you remember the goth scene?
Yeah.
Man, that
The
was all
scene-
through like high
The
school.
scene, year 9 scene with the side fringes.
Oh, that was emo.
Isn't it the
Emo.
same thing?
No. Oh my God, Lauren, get out.
I am.
emo and goth are not the same.
Okay. Here we
How
go.
dare
Here's
you.
some of the, I guess, understanding or knowing. In some queer circles, certain styles like flannel shirts or undercuts can signal community belonging.
Yes, they're the signals, the smoke signals that
The
we
bat-
all see.
The bat signals, the lesbian signals.
Yeah.
But these aren't universal or required. They're cultural signifiers, not rules.
Required. Imagine.
They're not required for you to be a lesbian.
For us to deem you as a lesbian, you must get an undercut and put on a flannel shirt.
I say oh no, but I wore one to your soccer game the other
Yeah,
night.
looked good. I thought you looked good in it.
Thank you. This myth fuels harmful stereotypes. We've said that before. It leads to assumptions, discrimination, and invalidation. For example, femme gay men or mask-presenting lesbians might not be believed or accepted because they don't look the part.
There's no part to look.
Also, I find that comes from discrimination within our own community.
Yeah, it does.
Which
And
is unfortunate.
that's also one thing that we're still unfortunately battling is that, we are ostracized by outside of the community and then sometimes we're ostracized within the community. And I think that comes from generational difference.
Yeah, it does.
And, we've said it before, sometimes you just have to move with the times, adapt new culture, adapt new language to make everyone feel like they do belong. And you know what? Even if you feel like someone doesn't belong here, just let them be.
Yeah.
Keep
If
your
they're not
opinion to
bothering you, it doesn't matter.
If you don't have something nice to say, just don't
say it
anything.
at all. Yeah. All right, ready for the next one?
I'm ready.
All right. Bisexual people are just confused or going through a phase. Myth or truth?
Well, we kind of touched on this before.
We did.
Myth. 100% a myth.
It's a big old myth, and here is why it's a myth and why it can be harmful to those who identify as bisexual. Jess mentioned the bi erasure before.
Bi erasure is real.
So, this myth suggests that people who identify as bisexual don't really know their sexuality yet. They do. It's bisexual.
But even if they didn't, that's okay.
Yeah. Or they're just experimenting before choosing to either be straight or gay.
It's not a choice.
Thank you. I was like, the choice ain't there. It implies bisexuality is a temporary stop on the way to the final identity rather than a legitimate orientation in its own right.
Yeah. No.
That's so sad.
Yeah, nah.
And unfortunately, you do see this with, again, I think it's a generational thing, but some people go, oh, you'll just figure it out eventually. You're just afraid to come out as gay. You haven't met the right guy yet, because that's our favourite one.
My favourite.
Oh, everyone has a bi phase.
To be fair, I've never had, maybe I have had someone say that to me, that I haven't met the right guy yet. No, I think I've said on the podcast before, a family member said to me, if you were straight, you'd have kids by now.
Yeah, that's what they said to
And
you.
I was
And you're like, I'm the same person,
I'm the same
bro.
person who still didn't want kids until like maybe this next year or two in my life. So unless it was an accident,
Nah, not with the
don't
person
really
that I
think-
know.
yeah, yeah.
Well, this is a harmful one because your sexuality is not a choice, as Jess whispered in the microphone before.
It's actually, scientifically proven if you listen to our other episode from a couple of weeks ago.
It's true. Well, as Jess said, if you listen to our Sexuality is a Spectrum episode, you would know that it is 100% not a choice.
Not a choice.
Calling bisexuality just a phase invalidates a real and enduring sexual orientation, causing feelings of shame, isolation, and confusion.
Mm-hmm.
It pressures people to choose a side, ignoring that bisexuality is about attraction to more than one gender, not just who they are dating.
Mm-hmm.
This myth fuels biphobia from both straight and the queer communities and contributes to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation due to stigma, dismissal, and erasure.
Yeah. And I think some of these things like you just haven't found the right man yet, you just haven't found the right woman yet, that kind of thing. I think all those things come from someone else's experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, just because they experienced that does not mean that's your journey as well.
Yeah.
You're not going to walk the exact same road as that person. And, I've had this argument before when people have spoken about, I saw a post on Facebook and it was like this girl talking about how when she was a child, she was a real tomboy.
Yeah.
And she kept asking her parents like, oh, I want to be a boy. And, they didn't put her on hormone blockers and they didn't do that because it was the 90s and that wasn't
there
like
wasn't
a massive
as much
thing.
education around it.
And she was saying, oh, well, now she's in her 20s and she's married to a beautiful man and they have 2 kids. And she's saying, oh, if she had have gone down that trans journey, she wouldn't have what she has now. And that's all good and well. And her message was that parents shouldn't be giving in to their kids saying they want to be a boy or they want to be a girl if they are the opposite gender because people grow and they evolve. Okay, that was her experience, but she can't expect that every other child that might be going through gender dysphoria is going to walk the same path as her.
Yeah.
You can't force your experience onto somebody.
No.
So I think yes, while that post is great for her, she can't then expect that everybody else's path is the same.
I think people also forget that there's so much before going through that whole transitioning journey. Like you go through a lot of psych evaluation and everything to make sure that it's not just a childish whim, that you are really on this path. This is really how you feel.
And can I say, for, everyone out there, I know I'm going down a transgender rabbit hole. Can I say, everyone out there that goes, oh, what if they make the wrong decision? Well, if they do, that's their choice. And then that's their life to work out. It's not, what's it got to do with you?
Nothing.
It's the same people that, I'm going to say this again. I know it's not just a cosmetic thing.
Yeah.
But the same people that have cosmetic surgery and then people go, oh, what if you regret it later? Well, if you do, you do. Can't change it
you
now.
You could argue the same thing about tattoos. If people get tattoos on their body, what if you regret it later? So same thing.
Yep.
Well, going back to this.
Sorry, I went on it.
Bisexuality after.
Rabbit hole.
I just wanted to say to my bisexuality kings and queens, bisexuality is valid and real. It's not a phase or a stepping stone. Many bisexual people remain so for life, which is true.
Just because you end up in a straight presenting relationship or a queer presenting relationship doesn't make you less bi.
Yeah. Attraction isn't binary. It exists on a spectrum.
Yes.
We know. Bisexuality means being attracted to more than one gender, not always equally or at the same time, and that's completely normal.
It is. It is very normal. So if any of our bi friends are out there thinking, oh, this person in my life is telling me this and it's telling me it's a phase and I haven't found the right person yet, do you know what? Just be on your own journey and don't let anybody else affect you.
Yeah. And if you need people to talk to, we're always here.
Yeah, swing a message.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Queer identities have existed across every known culture and era. Myth or truth?
I don't know culturally because I don't know a lot about history, but I'm going to say it's true because we have existed since the beginning of time.
Yeah. How? I don't know. How we've kept existing.
Yeah, I know. We've jumped a lot of hurdles,
Well, this is completely true. Queer people, including those who today might identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary or otherwise, have always existed.
Yes. We're here, we're queer.
Yep. Across history and continents, many Indigenous and ancient cultures recognize more than 2 genders and embrace queer identities. 2-spirit people in Native American nations, Hiras in India and
Fa'afafine.
Is that how you say it?
I think so.
Fa'afafine in Samoa, Warrior in Indonesia and Balka in the Philippines all held respected societal roles. Isn't that so interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Ancient Mesopotamian priests, mind you, like the Gala, performed feminine rituals, while ancient Greece, Rome, medieval Islamic societies and samurai-era Japan all have included and accepted forms of same-sex love and gender fluidity.
Mm-hmm.
Funny.
Mm-hmm.
In pre-colonial Africa,
pre-colonial, see?
Various tribes also acknowledged non-binary identities and same-gender partnerships. This rich global diversity was disrupted by European colonization.
What did we tell you?
Which imposed rigid binaries and criminalized queer existence, erasing many traditional expressions of gender and sexuality. This truth dismantles the myth that queerness is unnatural or new.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it highlights how queer people have always been a part of the human story, celebrated in some societies, hidden or punished in others, but were always there.
Always there. And, it makes me wonder, like, if colonization, when it came in, didn't oppress our queer community, I wonder what the world would look like now. Like, do you think homophobia would still be around?
I don't think so.
But then it's like, we still have racism.
But racism was also taught the same way that...
Yeah, it's all taught.
It's all taught. These are all like indigenous natives to their own land, and the minute that colonization happened, it was taught hate. So, same thing. Knowing this empowers queer people to reclaim history, challenge erasure, and affirm their identities are not a trend, but they are timeless.
And they are. As we've known, like, we've done a few of these historical episodes now, and we know that we've been here forever.
Yeah. All right. Ready?
Yep.
Many transgender people report significantly improved mental health after transitioning. Myth or truth?
I think that one's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one is 100% the truth, and I have many trans friends who have said this. Transitioning can be life-saving, not just life-affirming. And that's really true. You see in a lot of like documentaries or cultures. I know on Stan there's one I really want to watch where it's like from girls to boys or three men or something.
There was one on, I don't remember what program, but it was very, very interesting, and it followed the lives of 3 female to male people in the UK.
Yeah, I think we're thinking
of the same one. And I follow one of the guys
on
on TikTok. His name's Jamie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really, really good.
I think that's the same thing. And often you see how, and anyone would feel that way when you're so oppressed and so unhappy living in your body as unauthentically you. Of course, you're going to start to have these thoughts. And then, people... Even though, yes, trans people and non-binary people and queer people have been around for centuries, as we just read.
They've not all been able to have access to the affirming care
either. And that also ends up in the same unfortunate way that women who don't have access to abortion care end up really hurting themselves or killing themselves or making themselves unwell because of that.
It's really sad because those services are out there and they should be able to be available for everyone who needs it.
So for many trans individuals, transitioning, whether socially, legally, medically, or a combination, brings significant relief from the distress of gender dysphoria. The psychological distress resulting from a mismatch between one's gender identity and assigned sex at birth. Numerous studies show that trans people who are able to access affirming care and live as their authentic selves experience improvements in mental health, including reduced rates of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. Transitioning might include changing one's name, pronouns, clothing, or undergoing hormone therapy or surgeries, all of which can contribute to a profound sense of alignment between the body, identity, and lived experience. This alignment often results in increased self-esteem, a stronger sense of belonging, and a greater overall life satisfaction. In contrast, being denied access to transition-related care or facing rejection and discrimination often correlates with poorer mental health outcomes. It's not being trans that causes distress, it's often societal stigma, barriers to care, and lack of support.
And also, I want to just touch on something that we said in a previous episode where a lot of people outside of the queer community, when we're talking about people being transgender, they think that people that are trans, like the ultimate end goal is to end up straight presenting. And that's not the truth. Like, as we've seen from even guests that we've interviewed, like Storm and Jazz from Gayskate, Storm was male to female and is a lesbian.
Yeah.
The aim was not for her to be straight. The aim was for her to just love who she was.
You kind of answered a upcoming myth.
Oh no.
This next one. Being non-binary means you're just trying to be trendy. Myth or truth?
Well, it's definitely not the truth because I don't think anyone would want to be queer to be trendy. I think
that goes back to like our conversation and our argument of like, do you like being queer?
Yeah. I think the thing is, I can see how other people can say that because when one lot of people or one culture or one whatever is getting a lot of attention in a specific moment, all these other people feel safe enough to then expose themselves and come out and all that. So then people automatically think, oh, now everyone's just doing it to be trendy.
Yeah.
But no, I think you got to look at it the other way, that people are suddenly feeling safe enough to expose themselves in this way. and you're just kind of, shoving them down.
And I agree with you. I can understand from an outsider's perspective how they can assume that it's trendy. But I think if you look within the community, it is that the fact that someone was brave enough to come forward and say, hey, this is how I identify. And the fact that now there's more education and podcasts like us that talk about terms like non-binary and transgender, people are able to understand more and accept it. So of course they have a safe space to suddenly also be out and proud.
It's not as simple as Regina George was wearing cargo pants and flip-flops, so now I'm wearing cargo pants and flip-flops.
Non-binary identities are not a trend. They are valid, deeply personal and rooted in history.
Yes.
The misconception that being non-binary is just a fad often stems from increased visibility in recent years, which is kind of what we just said.
Exactly what we just said, yeah.
Which is more accurately a reflection of growing awareness and safety for people to express their authentic selves. We just nailed that on the head. Societal discomfort with our gender nonconformity and oversimplified media portrayals contribute to this misunderstanding. But being non-binary is not new. As we said before, many cultures around the world have long recognized more than two genders.
Yes.
All right. Asexual people are just late bloomers or haven't found the right person. Myth or truth?
Well, the myth. I feel like these are all myths, Lauren, that none of these are true.
Well, there was two true.
Were there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is how much attention I'm paying. Okay, so I can see why the myth is there. I think the real myth is that people think that asexual people haven't found the right person, but asexual people aren't interested in finding a sexual partner.
No, asexual people, their forms of intimacy are the emotional connection with someone, the romantic connection. Yeah. They don't want that sexual intimacy because they find forms of intimacy in a different way.
Yeah, yeah. There's also, just on the back of that, when we talk about sexualities like autosexual, you see all this shit on Facebook, and I think Facebook and social media in general is the worst thing that you can have if you're not educated on a subject.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, oh, that person's attracted to themselves.
Keyboard cowards.
But that's not actually the thing. Autosexual just means that like you are sexually satisfied by yourself rather than a sexual partner. It's not like that you...
Sometimes I feel like that means you're more self-aware of your
totally.
self. Yeah.
But the narrative that gets pushed on Facebook is, oh, this person's in love with themselves. And it's like, that's not the truth. You're getting it so wrong.
Yeah, but again, it's the lack of education, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the myth that asexual people are just late bloomers or haven't found the right person yet wrongly assumes that asexuality is a temporary phase, something to be outgrown with the time or the right relationship. This reflects a deep misunderstanding of asexuality, which is a valid sexual orientation defined by a lack of sexual attraction. In a culture that heavily emphasizes sex and romantic fulfillment as an essential tool to adulthood, those who don't experience sexual attraction are often mislabeled as broken, repressed, or simply not there yet. That's really sad.
It is sad, but that goes back to how we talk about anything outside of a social norm. You're automatically weird.
Yeah. Especially in youth, asexual people may be told they're just shy or will figure it out later.
Frigid,
yeah. Reinforcing the false idea that their identity is a delay rather than a reality. In truth, asexual individuals may still form romantic relationships, have sex, or enjoy physical intimacy, or they may not. And both experiences are equally valid.
I think that it goes back to the same thing of if we were taught all of these things in high school, like when it was like sex education, it would be great because you would then understand that you can be different from the person beside you. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But we go through life not having this education and then thinking that there's so many things wrong with us. It's like you see all these people having relationship issues on Reddit, you know? And it's like, well, A, there's no communication there. B, have you ever thought maybe you landed somewhere differently sexually on the spectrum than your partner and maybe that's why you don't connect?
I also did that sexuality quiz and they said I was 100% gay.
Yeah.
Explains a lot. Well, I could go on forever because I have quite a few here and I think we might have to do another episode of this because we're kind of getting into the long haul now. But I might end with this one for you. Being queer is a Western concept. Myth or truth?
Well, as we know from how much we've seen through history and different cultures, we know that this is an absolute myth.
Yeah, 100%. So this is an absolute myth. And the myth that queerness is a Western concept falsely suggests that the queer community and identities are modern inventions of Western culture.
Which we know is not true because we were suppressed by colonization, not brought in with it.
Yeah, rather than the natural expressions of human diversity found globally.
Which, can I say, if we take away all these things that influence us, like religion and social hierarchies and all these other things that come into it, and we just viewed each other as human, we could have all these relationships that we wanted to, or just explore our fluidity.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be so rigid, and we wouldn't have to feel like we're doing the wrong thing by liking the girl next door.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. So this narrative is often used to erase or delegitimize queer people in non-Western societies, painting them as victims of foreign influence or moral decline. In reality, many pre-colonial cultures around the world recognise and respected diverse expressions of gender and sexuality. As we mentioned before in a previous episode and at the beginning of this episode, identities we might now describe as queer. These rich traditions were often suppressed or erased by European colonial powers who imposed rigid binary gender norms and criminalised same-sex relationships. Today, religious and political leaders in some countries continue to promote this myth to justify anti-LGBTQIA+ laws, framing queerness as a threat to cultural or national identity. The lack of queer representation in mainstream, often Western-centric history further fuels this misconception. The truth is that queer identities have existed across every known culture and era. They are not Western imports, but deeply human.
We are all just human. And if we were always treated that way, we would have a very different outlook on how we live now. How different do you think the world would be?
I know. I think it would be so different.
It would be like living in a fantasy, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because we would have the freedom to just be ourselves without... What's the word?
Prejudice.
Yeah, without prejudice.
Without prejudice, without hate.
Do you know one thing from that movie 13, which was like
Still haven't watched it.
my first queer kiss
Awakening
experience thing. Yeah. One thing that was said, which it's not to do with queer, but the girl says in the movie, if everyone procreated with someone from a different race in 2 generations, we would have no more prejudice because we would all be mixed race.
Yeah, I know.
So that's really interesting. And if we looked at it in the same as like, you know, if
in terms of queerness,
if we could strip back all these like social norms, maybe like in another 2 decades of generations, we might have.
That's what I always find
so
interesting is like how, like, and we've mentioned this before, how do you suddenly have societal norms? What do you define as normal or unnormal?
But I think we've defined that because it's just been ingrained in us.
Yeah.
And what we've seen on TV and what influences us, that's what we think is normal.
Yeah.
That's why people that have grown up in queer circles don't understand why people hate queer people and like vice versa. Like, you know, I wish we could all just be.
Yeah.
And maybe one day.
You sounded like the girl in Mean Girls that doesn't actually go to the school.
Why could it just be rainbows and butterflies? Yeah. Well, I do feel like that, but maybe one day it will be.
Maybe. Obviously, I could go on and on about the myths that society or lack of educated people have constructed in their minds out of thin air about the community, but we would be here forever.
We would be.
So I hope our listeners learned something, or maybe they already knew something.
They knew.
And for now, that's it from us.
That's it from us. So until next week,
I guess you better remember to
stay gay, motherfuckers.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.